Just a summary question, Mr. Martinez. So your position is that you stand by your recommendation that you gave us in April, that this was fine under the state laws, this whole contract work is fine, and you're continuing to maintain that position, and you're only recommending that we look into outside counsel just as a further assurance?
I am standing by my opinion, and specifically the test that I utilized was fresh as of February 2007. It's contained in fact sheet 28, published on the Division of Pensions website. That test has remained unchanged since February to this date. I have no reason to change my view. The facts haven't changed at all. If anything, I think, you know, my observation of the arrangement with Mr. Nemeth is that he is working essentially unsupervised, responsible for his own profit and loss, providing his own workspace and all the other things that have to be done. I think it is misleading to think that the issue is the content of his tasks rather than the arrangement itself and the intention of the parties, as particularly the supervisory part of that. You know, you're expecting sometime after the end of the year to receive a recommendation from Mr. Nemeth on a potential referendum and facilities development. That's never really been worked on by him while he was here, so he's undertaking things that were not part of his repertoire before, and those things that were have served the interests of the board extremely well, because for having Mr. Calavita to have to relearn things that, I'm talking about the facts of cases where there are claims pending and so forth, would have been a terrible burden on him. You know, the efficiency of having Mr. Nemeth continue with stuff along that line was just very obvious. The fact that you could actually hire this individual for 2 years if you gave him the summer off in a full-time position tells you something about where the public policy of New Jersey presently is. Now, you know, there are reformists who say that, well, that's sort of a double dip in the pension system, and they get into all that kind of argument about it. And I'm not even going to go there, but that may or may not be the case. But at the end of the day, the issue for me is what does the law presently permit, and how far can you go to act in your best interest? And that's how we called it, based upon what the law permits. And I think it's unfortunate if somebody seems to imply that there's some skullduggery involved in this, because there is absolutely no skullduggery involved, and it's all very transparent and should remain that way. That's why I've suggested that we have this conversation in public, and that's also why I'm suggesting that I step aside. To answer the second part of your question, I believe that I am acting as corporate counsel in response to a situation where there is a potential divisiveness among the board that has already boiled over into a public forum, and unfortunately had the negative effect of probably attracting regulatory attention. And it is not the board's judgment that's in question on Mr. Nemeth's contract, it's mine. Now, given that situation, and my obligation to continue to represent all of the board fairly and without bias, it would be very distracting and unfortunate if I had to attend to defending my own position going forward in a representational capacity before the pension board, should it come to that. I don't think it will come to that, but you have the right to go to the pension board and say, we want it cleared up.
Well, and I think that's, can I just jump in for a second? Sure. and make a comment to the second part of your question, Judy? And kind of rewinding back to April, and as chair of the committee, I take responsibility for recommending to this board, based on the circumstances facing us, that we don't wait for an inquiry from the Pension Regulatory Commission, that we proactively put together the information on which we made our decision, including the advice given by our board attorney, and Bob eloquently stated how he did that, and we don't change one iota from the fact that we made a decision based on the information presented to us. I'm confident that the decision was the right one, and we should preemptively and proactively just go to the pension committee and present it to them and let them tell us where we might have been in error, if indeed that's the case. So that's what I would recommend, because to sit and wait and let something happen, to me at this point, is not the right thing to do, because we have nothing to question in terms of the process or the procedure that we went through to make an informed decision. So that's what I would recommend in terms of what we've heard tonight. And I would say that the advice of counsel to talk talk with a gentleman like Mr. Halpern in terms of who's familiar with the procedures and who are the right people at the pension group to make a rendering or a decision on this, I think is a wise judgment as well, and I would incorporate that. But not to second guess or to reevaluate the decision, but simply to say, let's go to the pension group ourselves as a board and say, tell us where there is any doubt in your minds why this isn't appropriate.